Residual Glitter. 11 stories about the end of your world. The first story, the just before world. There was a time of minimalism, of black and white, and, in the strangest case, of a powdery pink. The marks left by the water waves on the sand were the only luxurious look in this world. A bit bright, a bit serious, well, a bit random. Telling a story about a world of boxes, of an infinity of cubes, is difficult, because you lose your mind in the story itself, in the identical way things looked, and felt, and tasted. Perhaps it's a story so dark in its sparkling brilliance that it should simply never be told. I'll risk it, though. A normal day would start with a coffee from the nearest coffee shop from the place you slept. All of these cafes were identical anyway. The coffee was served in white cups and tasted very much like coffee, even though I knew it had no coffee beans in it at all. And no caffeine either. Caffeine has long been banned due to health reasons. Afterwards, we'd go to work, even though we had nothing to work on. We'd spend our time at work on screens, watching funny dances, beautiful landscapes, and cute kittens. All of this, even though some of us had never experienced the joy of petting a cat or hiking in the mountains. This was the time when travel was dangerous and reserved only for the elite. People who had flown were rare, and their memories of the experience were precious. I've met once such a man, and flying was a hidden dream of mine. In general, real experiences were non-existent at that time. However, we lived simulations of real experiences all the time and had specially designed rooms called embodiment chambers. But let's go back to a normal day. After work, we walked around the artificial sea. This was a salt lake in the middle of our city, with a machine producing air, currents in the core, and white sand all around. As far as we knew, every neighborhood in the city had such a sea. The salty aerosols were beneficial for breathing, and the light blue was psychologically appropriate. Everybody had to walk because everybody had to be healthy. Also for health reasons, we were no longer allowed to cook in private, and we all ate in the white restaurants. Everyone had the same menu. Because of metabolic changes, we ate once a day at 5 p.m. on the dot. We ate together, and the huge septic holes of the restaurants were filled with amiable smiles. Then we would use a random assignment program to find another person to spend the night and the night with. Everybody had someone, and the main rule of the system was that no one would ever meet the same person twice. In fact, we never got together with people from our past. I forgot to explain that this program was also used for work colleagues and neighbors. Even at the artificial sea, we never met the same people. Every day, each of us had a new place to sleep and work. The neighborhood seemed endless. We had no boundaries to our city. The notion of family didn't exist because all our childhood memories had been erased. We had awakened as 18-year-olds and knew that something must have existed before that. Another life, another space, maybe villages, maybe nature, and those beautiful landscapes in the embodiment chambers. But no one knew for sure. We were also incapable of having children. We had perhaps been sterilized before we were brought into the city. We didn't have the answer. At 10 p.m. on the dot, we were falling to a dreamless and sweatless sleep. Everything was perfectly controlled, from the chemicals in our brains, to the room temperature, and to the fresh smell of the sheets. The second story. That last white morning, before all the glitter, I said to myself as I looked at my pink reflection in the mirror that morning, you have to wake up. You have to play your character with care. You have to look a tiny bit at the sky, but not too much. You'll enjoy the sadness that exists in the silence and the silence that embraces the sadness. Your life is a circle, and you will live it fully and wistfully. Mornings were generally difficult, and sometimes the routine played games with your mind. Sometimes you even forgot you were already awake. It felt like an infinite awakening. Everything seemed an endless loop. The more pensive among us often said phrases like, I never wake up, everything feels the same, my body feels the same. Nothing is dysfunctional, everything is just perfect. Perfect for me. Nothing is bad, nothing is good. My mind is a blank page to be rewritten forever. I feel empty. I am a white shadow. It's funny to look back now, in retrospection, to all the cliches we told ourselves in a damnation attitude. That was the morning of the last day of walking in circles. Little we knew, and great was the power of the unknown. To see the pixels of our world falling, dissolving, pulverizing was truly spectacular. The third story. The sound of the first wave of glitter. The most haunting sound I ever encountered was the sound of everything changing into glitter within milliseconds. Milliseconds of eternity, a phrase I once used when I didn't know how painful the truth could be. It was a whole, as if matter cried and struggled and suddenly broke. You could understand that it was not a transformation of matter, but a replacement of matter. Think about how in the old world, the world before our time, interfaces were replaced in 3D programs. how you could render different structures while designing 3D objects. From metal, you could go to wood, from wood to glass, and so on. It was exactly like that, but in reality. People were bodies. Then they were glitter bodies. Then they were glitter dust. Then you would breathe them in and you would have the feeling that they were now in your body. Eventually, we are one and more at the same time. And the despair in people's eyes was growing with each addition of glitter to themselves. I don't know how some of us resisted the first wave of glitter, and I still fantasize about being transformed in those first few seconds and not having to live with the coming memories. The fourth story, the air in the time of glitter. We desperately wanted to breathe fresh air after the arrival of glitter, when it wasn't filled with the sparkling remnants of the former population. The air was gaseous and colorful, pink, yellow, and acid green. We ran from one place to another for fresh air, but it was hard to find. Occasionally, people would start running in the direction where was fresh air, but you could never count on getting anything really. Without a program that monitored our interactions, we were left with no interaction. No one trusted anyone, and forming a team, an exploration team, was impossible. Coming from a world without leaders, no one wanted to become one. In the face of this cataclysm, we felt more alienated than ever. The more you ran, the more you felt as if the air was becoming a heavy, colorful, mesmerizing, but definitely poisonous matter. Some colors gave us light hallucinations. With pink, for example, you could go back to the world of cubes for a few seconds. Everything was clean, everything was quiet, everything was exactly in its place. In those moments, the memory that appealed to me the most was the image of a freshly made bed. I could almost smell the bleach in the fabric. But slowly, I came to the conclusions that these hallucinations were vicious to our brains. We were seeing people around us in advanced stages of delirium from consuming too much of the colored gas. I tried to control myself, even though it would have been such an easy way out of the shimmering reality. The fifth story, the earth transformation. In the first moments of the glitter, the earth trembled and sighed and radiated colors, cheerful colors, gentle colors. Stripes of pink and pale blue were everywhere. Stones became transparent and liquefied, brightly tinted. Nothing was earthy anymore. Nothing was dirty or dusty or dark. Everything glowed so bright that it took months for our eyes to adjust. In the past, even though our world was white and debris-free, we had artificial seas and artificial parks full of perfectly adapted, non-invasive plants. Some of them were very tall, but we never had trees. Trees were banned long ago because of safety rules against espionage. Now it was all part of a huge conglomerate, full of broken, shiny versions of things from our past reality. Piles of liquefied rocks and glitter were everywhere, unwanted hills of the new reality. If you dig in that glitter, all you would find was still glitter, and many of us went mad this way. There were no more embodiment chambers and no more simulated landscapes, so to keep from going crazy, I would often pick up a piece of transparent pastel color stone from the ground, look through it at my skin, and imagine myself placed on the surface of my skin. My skin was my landscape, my skin hair was reeds, and my moles were hay piles in which I could take a nap. The sixth story, sparkalophobia. I remember how my hair floated on the liquid glitter in the very first wave. It made heart shapes, flower shapes, spiral shapes. So beautiful, so hurting. The trauma of beauty affected us all. Most people develop sparkalophobia. It's a serious phobia, especially when you are surrounded by glitter. More and more people couldn't live with it and became consciously blinded. But blindness didn't help them. Their sense of touch developed, and the glitter they now felt so strongly on their skin caused even stronger reactions. Also, the sounds of the glitter creaking under their footsteps seemed to terrorize them continuously. What actually helped was a combination of resistance to the glitter and developing the ability to sense when the next wave of glitter was coming and to move early in order to avoid further exposure to the poisonous dust. Having a glitter intuitive sense ensured survival. The waves of glitter that came after the first one didn't turn anyone else entirely into glitter anymore. But they did much worse. They turned people's brains. You could see firsthand how their gray matter disintegrated into tiny bits of dusty glitter, and the expressions on their faces would simply become horrified. This expression stayed with them forever after they were caught in a wave. They were no longer alive, but neither did they die entirely. As more of us ended up in this situation, the sadder the world became. We hadn't eaten for days before we realized we didn't need food. We had a few theories about this, like maybe we were being fueled by gases in the air, but we never knew for sure. It also didn't help that education in our world, unlike the one in the old world, hadn't been useful because programs held all the information. I didn't know how to calculate or identify chemical components, so I was stuck in pseudo-philosophical theories. The seventh story, the smell. For some crazy reason, the only smell I could sense in those moments was the smell of men's deodorant, fresh, strong, vibrant. It was so strong that I was holding my breath for a while, feeling as if my lungs were going to explode in a macho attitude. I knew this smell from the Museum of the Old World we had in this New World's neighborhood. Sometimes, in the embodiment room, they would show us how people from the Old World smelled like. That's how we also knew that this smell is very toxic, and it was not healthy to experience it for a long time. But what is healthy nowadays anyways? After a while, this scent turned into the smell of fear and despair. The smell painted me, it haunted me, it stayed on my skin permanently, no matter how hard I ran and tried to roll on the glassy surface. After a while, I realized that the smell was everywhere and that it played a sick game of peekaboo, and the more you tried to make it go away, the more you perceive it. It was as if the smell had its own intelligence and wanted to torture you, to find you in your very few moments of tranquility and ruin them. The eighth story, the night. The first night after the arrival of glitter was terrifying, and no one could sleep. We had no light and no heat, and it was so cold, I was afraid we would freeze to death. Slowly, we adapted to the cold and found we didn't even need sleep. Everyone was awake and silently observing their surroundings. We never knew when a new wave of glitter would come, so we were vigilant but scared. At night, everything glowed in the dark and formed strange shapes, ghosts of glowing creatures. Perhaps they were the bodies we inhaled when the glitter first came. Maybe now none of this is real, though it feels so real, perhaps more real than the life before. I miss the stars, and I miss the moon the most. Through this radiant haze, they can no longer be seen. No fantasies of saviors on the moon, no stories of other worlds in distant galaxies that have jaguars and giraffes and hummingbirds can be created anymore. Even our most hidden dreams are overtaken by reality. Who could save us from this glitter? And if someone came here now, who would we tell them we were? What are we? Are we carrying a virus? Or are we ourselves the virus? Are we the glitter? And if so, how is it possible that we can devour each other? The ninth story, the past. If I could go back in time for one day, I would choose to spend it on the beach. Sometimes I miss the calm view of the artificial sea. This memory is the only one that can counteract the image of people turning into glitter that I can now feel on my skin, in my lungs, in my mouth, in my eyes. Ghosts are real. The horror of people lost in glitter is haunting. Their terror in the face of the unknown is in me. I remember everything that has happened in the past. Endless layers of transparent moving images that overlap over other similar images And with every second, another image is formed, and the overlapping continues endlessly. The result is a continuous exchange in which you can have no landmarks anymore. Nothing is the same as it was a second ago, and the despair in the midst of this becomes permanent. The 10th story, love. In the old world, it was said that love can change everything. In the world before glitter, in our world, no one loved anyone, and we all lived a steady emotional life. In the world after the glitter, a handful of people tried to love, but the stories were not successful. The misty glow made them lose each other very quickly, either physically or spiritually. Adding glitter to the reality of the fact that the people trying to love now are the people who have never loved, never having had the need to love, doesn't give us much to hope for. In our past, world ties were not necessary. They were seen as a disease. And even if we did everything together and could barely remain alone, we were never really together. We were connected without being connected. Every day, we saw new people and acted the same way with each of them, and each of them acted the same way with each of us. Love was known from the movies and the museums, but it was largely dismissed as a behavioral disorder. Now the whispers around say that love might actually save us. The only problem is that the only thing we fear more than glitter is love. The 11th story, the running. We all run all the time to keep ourselves alive. The waves of glitter are unpredictable, like the weather in the old world. In this one, the weather was always the same. Not too hot, nor too cold, not too moist, nor too dry. Simply perfect. These waves are massive, and nothing can stop them. You can't take shelter because the glitter gets everywhere, into every crack, every hidden place. Slowly, everything becomes a desert of glitter, with lost-minded inhabitants wandering forever. The faster you run, the less glitter touches you, and you can still keep yourself sane. Who would have believed me if I had told them in the past that we'd end up running from glittery things? When the glitter moves, you have to move too. We'll be running until the end of our time, full of glitter, full of terror, trying to escape from the shiniest universe that ever existed. The end.